Just briefly up front, the methodology for those of you who haven't been to this event before or know about the survey. 34,000 people surveyed around the world, 28 countries. The survey's done in the autumn. It's October, November. It's worth saying for the UK data, we did a second wave, as we always do, of a further 2,300 people in the UK, and we did that after the general election. So the sample size for the UK is a kind of whopping 3,400. Now, we talk to three groups. We talk about the general population, that's everyone, of course. We talk about the informed public. These are the people who are in top income quartile. They are regular consumers of media. They're university educated. And the third is the mass population. So that's the general population minus the informed public. Okay? Now we look at this data in a way because it allows you to dig underneath the kind of headline figures and unearth much richer insights. Now, what we've seen in recent years is two groups living in two realities, as Richard says, the informed public and the mass. And there is a significant trust gap now between these two groups. In addition, and I think this is pretty striking this year, the UK mass population has now fallen down right down the leagues. We are now second from the bottom. Only Russia is beneath us. And when you ask people the question, is the system working for you? The answer they give sheds light on actually why we are in the position we are. Nearly 3 in 5 people say the system is failing them. That's up 6 points year on year. Public cite a lack of or a sense of injustice, a lack of confidence in their leaders, and a desire for change. And as Richard points out, in the UK, we're also fundamentally questioning the effectiveness and fairness of our economic system. A majority think capitalism, as it exists today, does more harm than good. And the impact of globalization and the speed of tech transformation are being keenly felt. 3/4 of people are traveling to work today worried about losing their job. I mean, that is an absolutely stunning statistic. 3/4 of people are worried about job loss. You can imagine now, thinking about the productivity challenge we've got in our country, if we took that worry away, where we would get. Now, what are people worrying about? They're worrying about the gig economy. They are worrying about a perception of a looming recession. They're worried about having outdated skills, jobs going overseas, automation making their jobs completely disappear. Not only that, they believe that the pace of technology is just moving too fast. 72% feel actually on that point that even government isn't there to support them, that government doesn't have the necessary understanding to regulate the tech industry effectively. And in the age of deep fakes and misinformation, more than 2/3 of people worry that technology is making it impossible to know what they are seeing or hearing is real. People worry that the media they use is now contaminated with untrustworthy information, and they're concerned that fake news is being used as a weapon. That concern is up 19 points from 2 years ago. Now, this year, we've also picked up the consequences of the kind of toxic political discourse and how the political conversation has coarsened over the last year or so. Political motivations are being thrown into question, and this is having a very corrosive impact on trust itself. 60% of people believe that politicians are deliberately using public policy issues to create an environment of fear that they can then exploit for political gain. 2/3 say the way politicians behave is making society more divided. 3 in 5 agree that politicians have become more likely to lie or mislead the British public. I think that is a stunning finding. And Brits are pretty tough, actually. They want fairly harsh punishment for those who are caught doing so. A majority said that politicians that lie should resign. A third said they should be fined. And a quarter, I don't know if that's representative of this room, a quarter said They should go to prison. Quite harsh. And this is really interesting, this goes to the fact that trust is so nuanced, actually. The public have a complex relationship with telling the truth themselves. Almost half of the public are actually okay with politicians lying if it gets the job done. Just don't get caught, is the attitude. So, and I think what is particularly striking on this is the kind of moral flexibility that people have. And actually, it's twice, we all laugh about this, but it's twice as likely to be found amongst the better informed, that attitude, and wealthier than the rest of the population. So the informed public are much more likely than the mass population to tolerate lying, to get Brexit done, 28 against 18, to stop Brexit, good luck with that, 23 to 16, or to get their favoured party in power, 28 for the informed public against 15. So we find ourselves in this troubling position. We're in a moment when capitalism is in question. There are fears about job security, worries about the pace of technological change, and serious concerns about politicians misleading the public. And this potent cocktail is undermining people's faith in democracy. 3 in 5 say that democracy is losing its effectiveness as a form of government. And if you think about what Richard was saying about state capitalism versus free market, this is very worrying. When you look at how people rate government in terms of competence and ethics, it's pretty bad. We asked a number of questions to measure the 2 dimensions Richard talked to us about, competence and ethics. We plotted them on this XY axis you can see on the slide behind me. Now, obviously, I mean, it's to state the obvious, you want your institutions certainly to be in the top right box, both ethical and competent. But as you can see, that's not where they sit at all. And actually, business here is, I was asking this question earlier, that competency is down to -50, and government competency is -61. So it's a bit like the AMP in God, what was that? Spinal Tap. Thank you very much, John Shield. It's like the AMP in Spinal Tap. It goes up to 11. I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary. So of the 4 institutions we study, you can see them. They're all languishing down in this unethical zone. Only business is seen as competent. If you look at the sort of lightly shaded area, that's the global average across all 28 markets we plotted. And you can see the scale of the challenge. Now, all is not lost. There is some evidence that this year's data may have some positive sort of attributes to it. Although 61% of Brits believe the UK is a divided country, it turns out that we actually have far more in common than we think. For or against Brexit, young or old, rich or poor, north or south, there is an agreement on the priorities we face as a country. Healthcare is a top issue, so agree 85% of people. Next, tackling crime, so say 84%. And even areas that previously have been the concern of maybe younger, more metropolitan groups, gender equality, protecting LGBTQ+ rights, are now important policy areas to more than half of Britain. We've also got a lot in common when it comes to solutions too. 77% of people say government and business should be collaborating to solve social issues. 2 in 3 believe that the fate of business and government is intrinsically linked. But just 27% of people think that business is doing well at that point of partnering with the government, and only 26% say they're doing a good job at partnering with civil society. So this suggests there's huge room for improvement and a genuine opportunity for business to work with government and with civil society, NGOs, to make progress. Now, we've done analysis globally that shows when people see businesses partnering together, not working in silos, it gives institutions a double-digit trust gain. Business, the public say, also needs to think more broadly about who it serves. 93% of people believe that stakeholders are most important to long-term business success. Employees are on the top, followed by customers, then local communities, and at the bottom of that stakeholder stack is shareholders. Much of the business would say they get this. Thank you very much, we understand it. And lots of companies are talking about it as well. The question now is who's really acting on it? But what is clear year in, year out is that the employees of companies want their leaders to be more active in addressing many of the issues our study covers. 85% expect their employer's CEO to speak out on issues like training for the future, ethical use of tech, automation, income inequality, and diversity and inclusion. Nearly 3/4 of people say CEOs should lead on change rather than waiting on government to impose it. But government undoubtedly needs to act too. Now, this is particularly the case here in the UK. If the Prime Minister hopes to hold on to the support lent to him by traditional Labour voters, it's clear he'll have to make a real quantifiable difference to their lives. It's worth saying that the wind is currently in his favour. We have seen a 13-point bounce in the number of people thinking Britain is on the right track since last year. Boris Johnson has an 80-seat majority. Trust in government is up 10% since we did the survey in November to January. So this gives him space to do some pretty big, bold stuff. Moreover, and more generally, there's an opportunity and expectation for all leaders to act, as Richard says, and to do so with urgency. When you find yourself really at the bottom of the pack, second from last in this global trust ranking, there's not much further to fall. I don't think any of us wants to see us at the bottom this time next year. Thank you very much.